Welcome to Answers About Alzheimer's. I'm your host, Debra Costu, and I am going to partner up today with Larry Anderson, and he is the host of Living with Louie podcast. And Larry and I have been partnering together to put on these fabulous shows for you guys from two different perspectives, because Larry actually has Lewy body dementia and I am a dementia trainer. So we have come together to try to provide you guys with even more insights and education than you could ever get. So I ask, please, that you subscribe to the channel if you're new, if you're just visiting, or even if you've seen many of my videos, please subscribe. This lets YouTube know that you like the channel and helps to push it out to other families in need. So you're actually helping other people. Shoot me a comment. Let me know if you have any questions or any topics that you'd like me to cover. I'm more than happy to do that for you. And let me know where you're watching from. I love to see people from all over the globe engaging and learning about Alzheimer's and dementia. And today we're going to get into Lewy body dementia, and we're going to talk about grief and loss.
I,
So
th-
I
I,
just want to say thank you, Larry, for joining me today.
I don't, well, you're quite welcome, Deborah. And I don't know that you can necessarily say that the grief is with Lewy body. I think it's with any type of dementia that when you get when you get the diagnosis, and in my case with the Lewy body, that took quite a while. It was, uh, almost 2 years of, watching things go away and things changing and knowing that these things were happening and, and not knowing why. And so the time that it takes to get that diagnosis, may be longer with Lewy body than it is with other forms of dementia, but I think that the process, the emotional process, the emotional roller coaster, if you will, that you go on when you are diagnosed with this. Um, I think that's goes across the all dementias. And I will say that for me, it was when you first get the diagnosis and you've gotten these things that have all been happening. Now you have this diagnosis and you go on Google and you look it up and they say, "Oh my," and there's like you're going to be dead within 5 to 7 years. All there's nothing positive to, there, and I think that just by nature of losing independence, losing, well, for me, I lost my job, I lost my purpose, and you go down this rabbit hole of depression that, for me, um, was very difficult to find a way out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Larry, can I jump in for a second?
sure.
So it's interesting to me because that's your personal experience with your diagnosis. And
Hmm.
that's also what's happening for the caregiver, right? Because they may have to give up their job to stay home to take care of their loved one.
Yes.
And so they miss out too.
Right.
It's like a double whammy.
So this grieving process that you have to go through, is on both sides. It's on the caregiver side, as we've talked about, and it's on the side of the person that's affected with the dementia. And
Yeah.
um, the was fortunate enough to have a group of therapists, um, that came in, and I have to say that, my experience with physical therapy prior to that was never favorable because it was like, "Okay, come in. Here's these exercises we want you to do." And they'd show you the first time. Next time, "Oh, just go over there and do your exercises." while they have their cell phones out and doing everything but making sure you're doing them correctly. And to me, it seemed more like a cash grab than therapy.
Mm.
And so this is in-home therapy that I have, and one of the members of the team is a social worker and counselor, and she's the one who kind of helped me find my way out of this depression by understanding that there are stages to the grieving process, and that you kind of have to go through all those stages to get to the point where you're accepting things. Um, she also told me about an interesting analogy, um, uh, called the ball in a box. And um, if you can, if you can picture, it's like a box, and in the box is this ball. And at first, the ball's really big, and you there's a button on the side of the box, and every time the ball hits this button, you're going to feel the other stages of grief come in: the depression, anger, um, denial, bargaining, uh, and I think that you go through those emotions. And so when you first are there and you're first getting diagnosed, if you look at that, you've got this big ball in the box, and by gosh, it hits that button a lot,
Yeah.
and it's hard to find your way forward. But as I found a purpose, my purpose was to raise awareness through my podcast. That puts my mental, cognitive it exercises my brain, and it, gives me some purpose to spread the awareness and let more people understand what this is really like. And so as you get to the point that you're accepting your diagnosis and you're coming out of this rabbit hole, that ball is still there in the box. It's just not quite as big. So now it maybe will not hit that pain button as often, but it's still going to happen. And there's, even with over a year now um, of occupational therapy in my home, I still get very frustrated with very simple tasks because my dexterity is not there. And so there comes the anger back, you know,
Hmm.
and the frustration. And sometimes that leads me back into some depression, but then I can get back out of that a little easier because now my tools are a little bit more. I have more tools to uh to draw from, different strategies that I've been taught.
So, Larry, when we're talking about this ball in a box
Mhm.
and it starts kind of bouncing around and it's hitting that like pain button, right?
Mhm.
I feel like with with grief, like if somebody passes away, right? You kind of go through the stages of grief. Sometimes it's messy, you go back and forth, but then for most people there's a healing process after.
Well, that's exactly what she when she first started talking to me about, she said, "You're grieving." And I went, "What do you mean I'm grieving?" And she said, "You're grieving." Well, and I said, I don't understand." And she said, "It's just like when you lose someone."
Yeah.
She
But
said,
with
"Because you're."
dementia, it takes longer, right? Because you don't really see the end or know, what's coming. And from my experience is that when there's another decline or another loss of abilities, it's like you're starting the grieving process over again.
That's because
And
that
they
ball's
overlap and it gets all messy.
and the ball keeps coming around and hitting that button. And
Yeah. With
and
each loss of an ability or a
oh,
decline or a loss of
even a bad day,
abilities.
even a bad day. I mean,
Yeah.
is with my Lewy body, things will be different tomorrow than what they were today. Over the weekend, I had a very bad day where my balance was way off. My legs felt real weak, and it was just time for me to be extra cautious because I know that I'm in danger of falling, and so I spent a lot of time laying down and watching TV and just making sure that I was keeping myself safe. And when I was up, I was having to use a walker instead of a cane. And those days don't make me feel good, but those are days when, by gosh, that ball hits that button. And so, but then the ball will roll away from there, and I have a good day. And you know, I think that one of the things that I have learned is that I can't do the things I used to be able to do the way I used to do them.
Is that where the acceptance part starts to come in?
Yes, when you start to learn how to that, yes, I can still do things. And I'll just give you a little example. When I bought my home, I have a screen porch, and I knew that the screen porch was not constructed the way it should have been, and that eventually was going to have to be replaced. Well, before I actually had my official diagnosis, I decided I was going to do that. Well, when I was younger, I probably could have done that in a weekend without any problem. Took me months because I had to take it when I could do. It was like all right, I can do this today. So I I would go ahead and do what I could do. But as soon as I felt like I wasn't being able to do it and do it the right way, I had to walk away from it. So yeah, I was still able to do the project. I just couldn't do it the way I used to. I have to come up with another way and new ways of going about it. But that's all helped also through my occupational therapist. Uh, and so you have to also learn, I think, to celebrate the victories, no matter how small they are.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
is take the time to celebrate those things because those things will help keep that ball a little smaller. Um, and and mental attitude, I think, has a lot to do with things, but it takes a while to get out of that rabbit hole. It
Mhm.
takes a while for people to show you, yes, you can do this. Yes, you can do that. And I'm blessed to have that available to me, to have that type of therapist involved with me in my care. Um, if I'm having a problem with well, I'll give you, for instance, if I'm having a problem with very rigid muscles in my arms, and they'll come in and they'll work on stretching those muscles, relaxing that, and that's all we'll do. That's all we'll work on because that is the problem of the day.
Mhm.
Um, and the next time they come, I may feel fine, and we'll get into some large movement exercises and, but they never come in with a preset plan.
Mm.
I'm sure they have one rolling around up there,
Right.
but 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 they're not, they're capable of thinking outside of the box and finding ways. But, I I talked about the rabbit hole on one of my podcast episodes because that's a deep, dark, depressing place that I think both parties sink into when you initially get hit with, here's what, and because you start thinking about all the things that are going to happen, and all the things that you're going to experience, and and for me, I know that it was what's gonna happen to my loved ones, what's gonna happen to my family.
Yeah.
Um, and I know it's not easy for my wife to watch what's happening with me. Um, I told her one day, I said, "I'm not the man you married, and I'm not." She said, "Yes, you are." "Yes, you are." She said, "Things are a little different, but you're still the man I married." And, you know, that's I'm glad she can feel that way.
Can I talk a little bit more about that? I want to go a little bit deeper into that.
You may.
So, from my experience from the caregiver's perspective of that, because they do see their loved one slipping away, or maybe that part of the brain that houses our personalities and our characters is changed. But there's also the loss of that relationship, right? Because when one person has the decline, they have to overcompensate for that, right? So they may not be able to find the comfort or the security that they once found in that person, right? Because they're not able to provide that for them anymore. The intimacy of the relationship has changed because more it's now of like a caregiver caregiving role rather than like a spousal relationship. So it changes. And and both parties end up being more isolated, but separately sometimes, right?
I would agree with that, and I think that from my perspective on that, um, I think that you have I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's all right. We were
Uh,
talking about like the compatibility and the companionship and the relationships and intimacy between caregiver and care receiver.
I think some of it maybe erodes somewhat, but I also think that there are things that happen that I think that you end up really talking about some really deep, 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 dark feelings with one another. And if you can have those conversations, I think that there's still intimacy there. It's is it the same? No, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful that I um, still have the ability to reason with things to a degree, and I'm really kind of maybe scared, if you will, of knowing what's going to happen. That eventually I'm not going to be able to have that anymore. So I find that I treasure the time more than I used to. I used to maybe take it more for granted. Um, And so I think that you can still have intimacy in your relationship. You just it's at a different level. It's a different road. The whole
Yeah.
road's different.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I in the beginning of this, you said that you teach people with with dementia. I want to thank you for teaching me how to have Lewy body. Just kidding.
Larry, Larry, you're so funny.
You can pop
Larry,
that up.
Larry, I've had several of your viewers reach out to me, and it's so great when we connect because um, I've I've actually had several people take the course who are a care person for someone with Lewy body dementia specifically, and it's it's very challenging. Lewy body dementia is very challenging, especially when if you're a person who has the hallucinations, which is a very high statistics of having hallucinations with Lewy body dementia. And everyone who has taken my course has had success with being able to manage those hallucinations and in most cases actually eliminate them until another one comes down the road. But teaching them how to handle it both for the person with Lewy body dementia and the care person it can be life changing.
Yes. Well, it is. It absolutely is. It's been a role reversal in my home. I know. Um, I used to be the breadwinner. I was the one that going to work every day, and now my wife's been well, has always worked also, but and now it's her that's going to work. I try my best to take care of the things around the house. I'll make sure that when she comes home, the kitchen's kind of cleaned up from the night before, and that the laundry maybe is done. Whatever I can do, because those are things that I feel like I feel like I need to be doing something, but B, I also need to take as much off of her plate because I'm putting enough stuff on her plate. I don't know if you and I talked about it, but I used to, or like, get so aggravated with the things I couldn't really do as smoothly. I mean, just washing dishes, trying to pick up silverware and have it falling out of your hands because your hands aren't going to hold on to it, or you drop a glass or something like that. Those things that have happened, and causes me frustration. And then a lot of times I've done this a gazillion times. I'll put the clothes in the wash machine, forget to turn it on, you know, and I'll start the dishes, and then I might be waiting for the sink to fill up with water, and I'll turn around and I'll start something else, and then I'm like got all these things going, and then all of a sudden I have to stop and go, whoa, wait a minute, you know, got all these things going on, and I'm not accomplishing anything,
Mm,
and the frustration level just keeps building and building, and I used to just throw all that stuff in this nice wagon. And when my wife got home from work, I dumped the wagon right on her. And I I had a discussion with my counselor about that situation, and because I was aware of it, but I didn't know how to control it.
hmm
And that's that in and of itself, not being able to control that is another source of putting you right back into this stages of grief, of anger and depression and denial. But at any rate, um, she suggested write it down, write down what's frustrating you. Just jot it down, just a little note.
hmm
And she said, right before your wife gets home, I want you to look at that list of things that you wrote down and just take a minute and think about them. And you'll start to realize that, yeah, you got frustrated. Yeah, you got aggravated, but yeah, you did get through it. But now I've taken something that I was getting ready to dump on the wagon, and I've turned it into a a moment to reflect on the fact that I did successfully get that done, and I can take a minute and change that whole thing so that now I'm not dumping a wagon on her because I'm looking at those things and going, no, they're not really that important. She doesn't need that. And so practicing that and doing that has helped.
hmm
And I mean, I don't know from your side, it's the caregiver side, but from my side, anything I can do to decrease the frustration that she's going to experience, decrease the amount of concern she's going to have from day to day. Whatever I can do is that's just going to help our relationship to stay, I think, on in a better place for longer. And I don't know how long. Uh, and I'm sure that this target will change as well, just like many of them. But
Yeah.